Good evening. Welcome to this edition of the entry to Hasidic Nurses Notes. This is the 7th of July, the 27th of the month of the Jewish month of Tammuz, Sunday evening. And the Torah portion we'll start this week is in the fifth book of the five books of Moses. It's the beginning. It's known as Deuteronomy, or in Hebrew is Devarim. And just briefly, it's interesting to know that scattered throughout it are very clear descriptions how uh, God revealed himself to a whole nation, the Jewish nation at Mount Sinai, and gave him the Torah and the laws, and not just to one person, to a whole nation. It was this revelation. As always, there are many things that can be covered and should be covered, considering the religious aspects and the geopolitical aspects. And remember, as far as spiritual and what would you say, worldly, there really is no line of separation. They're all related. So for tonight, we're going to go to the beginning of the Noahide laws and start to examine these laws in more detail. I'm going to make my disclaimer that I'm not a rabbi, I'm not a doctor, and this is basically whatever learning I've had and my experiences. I'm trying to put this together in ways I've seen it or have heard other people seen it very well and related it very well and give it to you. And so I help us with some help. So we'll start at the beginning. We have the Noahide laws, and they're really uh, organized in a presentation in the book called the Mishnah Torah of the Rambam, Moses Maimonides. They were given at the time, all at the time of the giving of the Torah as well. So this is a matter of whether they're written, categorized, and written down. And I'll just read them. There's six precepts were given to Adam initially, and they would get prohibition against worship of false gods. Remember, this is English translation. Prohibition against cursing God. And by the way, you'll see in some literature it says blessing God. It's use a euphemism not to really give credence, give power to that negative concept. So sometimes you'll say not to curse God. That's a euphemism. It diminishes that kind of presentation uh, in conversation, but not in reality. The prohibition against murder, the prohibition against incest and adultery, excuse me, and that comes under a category called Gilead Rias, and the prohibition against theft. And not, and another one was given to Noah, and that's why we called it the laws of Noah, because he finalized it. And that's the prohibition against eating flesh taken from a living animal. And the seventh law, which was given also to Adam, was to establish courts of justice, and that was in a positive. So there are seven laws, six were presented in a negative format, and the seventh, the last one mentioned, is the laws of courts of justice. This is how the Rambam has it set out and presented. So first of all, what's the point of laws? Um, well, first of all, we establish obedience, and with that, punishment or reward. Allegedly, that's performance related, and places to go for punishment in the afterlife. We call it Gehenna, and for the negative, and heaven or the world to come. But there's another place. It's this world here. That Hasidic philosophy And standard Torah philosophy believes that there are also what we call fruits of proper conduct to be received in this world. So, a person to think, well, anything I do, I'm not going to see the results of the world to come. It doesn't go. This is when we call Mishnah. It's in some of the prayer books, especially in Lubavitch. I not say exclusively, but it says these are the things for which man has the ability to have the fruits in this world, and the stalk or the trunk, the real producing entity in the world to come. And for the Jewish people, this is written out: honor father and mother, gifts of kindness, goodness, attending a house of worship, having guests, helping a bride and groom get married, study of Torah. So don't think for a moment that you're just here in a test area and seeing how you perform for a latter time. No, we'll put a lot of emphasis on this world, and also there's a concept of the resurrection of the dead. So that would seem to imply it's going to be in a tangible world. So this whole concept of what's heaven, what's earth, and the world to come, it's a whole discussion, and I'm not on top of it all. I just want to make these few points. Okay, so again, what's the point of laws? Um, that we also have the opportunity to develop a relationship with God. And there are many relationships with God. Three classic ones are like a child and a parent, a master and a slave, and a king and a subjects. And it spreads that panorama. And therefore, we want to perfect that, or those relationships, and ultimately maximize them. And there's love. There's a real bonding to it. God cares about us. We're not just slaves. Like so, a parent to a child, which is a close relationship. And with that, there's a partnership. We learned that God did not create the world perfect, which He could have done. He left some imperfections, and he said, "I'm going to give man who follows my instructions the opportunity to be my partner to perfect the world." So these mitzvahs or these laws, the commandments, the deeds we have to do and not do are also contributory to perfecting the world as God wants it and being his partner. So it's really an amazing relationship. And to take it even further, that um, having this kind of relationship brings us to a statement in the Torah learning. It says that a Eved, a Melech, says a servant of a king is himself a king. And I mean, on the books, it may not seem true, but in reality, when people are in a king's court approaching a king that they don't know well and don't have a relationship with, they'll sometimes approach people who are close to the king and ask them to intercede and see what they can do. So becoming servants to the king is not just a diminution of your humanness and your being. It's really an elevation. So we have these through the commandments. We have very different levels of accomplishments and expectations in this world. And how do we reach the status? Well, in the book called Pirkei Avos, which I mentioned, or Ethics of the Fathers, in the first chapter, and the second Mishnah or second um, phraseology, it says the world is supported by three columns. One is prayer, and this is where we have really a personal bonding with God, just to begin with. And second is to learn. Now, learning someone's will also is an attachment. So we find out more about who God is by learning his will and wisdom. So it's just not that he's some far out distant entity, or by learning what he wants and how he wants it done, we learn about him. And finally, doing his will, actually fulfilling the deeds we're supposed to do. And this is the seven laws of Noah, children of Noah, and their offshoot. Present one other quote from Torah literature um, to demonstrate the type of relationship. Like I said, the servant of the king is a servant, and it says also there's no king without subjects, like there's no parent without children. So if God puts us in a very enviable position and saying to us, he needs us. Like a king needs subjects, there's no king without subjects. And again, a parent with a child and the love of a parent for a child. Now, once we've made this establishment about laws, and we go on to say why were the first six, or why are six of these laws, and very key, they're all key, of course, presented in the negative. We have, for example, the first law, we'll take, which in the Noahide is you should not worship other gods. And it doesn't come on to say, I'm God. Like it says in the first commandment, or the Ten Commandments, that are there for the Jews. It says, I'm the Lord your God. It took you out of the land, out of Egypt, out of the land of bondage. And establishes him as our God. And so why the negative? Well, there's again, this is my opinion, from a learning technique that is actual, that says from a negative you can learn a positive. So if God says you should not worship other gods, then we can infer there is God, the one God. And remember, it's not one in computation, like one, two, three, four, the first, second, third. One means only. But it's interesting that these entities that a person could possibly worship are called gods, not just objects, not like an idol or an animal. It says gods. And in in that context, that these godly like entities have powers and abilities that go beyond man, different than the angels. But remember, they are creations of God, but it can be easily distorted, and a person might, by accident, worship them. And what's the problem? God's God, so you worship some, secondary being, and that is a problem. It's a big problem. Idol worship, even the Ten Commandments, worship of false gods. Why is this a problem? Well, um, if we recognize that these entities are there, um, then it's could dilute our recognition of God. And to worship them detracts from our focus on God. And that being the case, it could affect our observance of God's will. And this is also an insult to God's status. Who and what is God? God is way, I mean, he's way above all these other gods, so to say, and he's the one who produced them. And they even recognize him as their king. But when they're dealing with us, they get a little haughty and arrogant, and they like to think that they're in charge. So being involved with them interferes with our mission to partner with God, to have Him revealed in the world, and it gives status that they don't deserve. So this is an insult to God and really destroys the whole matrix of how the world's to be made. And I mean, I'm not really even touching to the real core of the, the negativity of idol worship. It's one of the most heinous sins in, in, in God's eyes. So therefore, um, we have the positive that God is there, you know, from as inferred from all these negatives, and very important that these negatives are elaborated so people are aware of the likelihood of mistaking other entities as something to worship and diminution of their relationship with God. Now, with this in mind, the whole presentation about the first law of not to have false gods, and again, this is superficial, but because one can come to the question then, if we have such a great relationship with God and the chance of negating that the greatness of that the relationship, why do we need the second? Not to curse God. And who in the right mind would curse God within these parameters? So this could, in my opinion, lead one to start thinking about this is the ball game. We went through basic training, took our exams, and had a few practice sessions, but now we're into the game. And in that game, God has put influences that could distract or distort or misdirect our conduct in relation to God. And within the world, it's all related to God. So we have to start saying that there are influences out there which we call evil. And again, they are creations of God. Why would you do that? I mean, we can have it. We got the will there. Sounds great. Let's do it. Reward. Stay away from punishment. And God said, not so easy. Takes away your free choice. Are you really respecting your parent, respecting your king, because it's a free ride? It's like it's the only game in town, or because you recognize who God is and recognize what He wants, and say, "I want to do what He wants. I'm willing to make an effort of self-sacrifice to a point, putting down my will, because we are given a will which is not godly and which can distract us and lead us in the wrong direction. So God wants us to accomplish, like a parent. He wants sincerity, like a king. And this, by the way, is a reflection on the concept of God created man in His own image. Now we learn, or you will learn, or you have, that God doesn't have a physical body. I mean, that makes Him finite, and He's infinite. Gives Him borders, and He's not. So how does man compare to God? So this in part is a reflection of how we can relate to God through our own experiences as parents, supervisors, bosses, owners, members of communities, and how we conduct ourselves. And it's interesting that in this world that things that are usually very, very desirable to the point where they have a very strong attraction. There's an old phrase that said they're either fattening, illegal, or immoral. I mean, how is that? Uh, you have to start thinking maybe there's some divine plan. I mean, no problem. God says, eat as much as you want and go wherever you want when you want to go. So we see that, um, and also there's things that are permitted, but over an indulgence with them also gets into the in that forbidden zone. So we have the for the Noachites, the five laws of Noah. To encompass these behaviors, you can see that murder, theft, immorality, intimate relationships, and in part the treatment of animals reflect a lot of those influences, which could lead us in the wrong direction. So these pitfalls become recognizable. And as I said, in part by learning. Um, book, your parents, your experience where you choose to live. The story of Lot, um, Abraham's nephew, he was given a choice where to live because there were flocks and cattle that were too much for where the common ground, and he chose to be close to the land of Sodom and Gomorrah, and it was good land, very good land, but he put him close to these people, and as a result, it was pretty much his downfall. He miraculously survived it, and he had problems from it afterwards. So where you choose to live, with whom you choose to associate, are very critical. So Torah teaches us, how to come close to God and maintain that relationship. And therefore, you'll see in the books of Noachite that ignorance is not bliss. When it comes to the laws of Noah and what their implications and ramifications and involvements, that to say, well, I never knew. Nobody told me not to. That's a no go. And to take it a step further, we could apply this, I believe, to what you hear sometimes historically, or I don't even know now. It said, military, we are only following orders. What happens to be in the military, there are illegal orders. I think the Geneva Convention kind of describes that. That even if you're ordered to do something illegal, improper, you have to refuse and take it to a channel. Now, when it comes down to full ramification of that, I'm not a judge. I'm not in those